Welcome to the Home Business Podcast with Richard Captain Henderson, publisher of Home Business Magazine, and Sherilyn Colleen, managing editor. This how-to show helps you successfully operate your home-based business.
Greetings and welcome to the Home Business Podcast. I'm Richard Captain Henderson, your skipper at Home Business TV.
And I'm Sherilyn Colleen, your co-host.
Let's secure for C and get underway. Growth is hard. Not all home-based businesses grow. Growth is also a double-edged sword. It can be oxygen for a company if pursued intelligently, or it threatens its existence if pursued recklessly. So what's the recommended middle path in pursuing growth?
First, embrace the right mindset that growth has to be earned. Then pursue it just as any other business process, with discipline and with a mixture of courage and caution. In today's episode of the Home Business Podcast, we interview Dr. Gaurav Bella, a trusted expert in leadership, marketing, innovation, and strategy.
Dr. Gaurav Bella is currently the CEO of KnowledgeKinetics.com, a company committed to helping business owners and visionary leaders practice customer-first thinking. So greetings, Dr. Gaurav Bella. Say hello to our podcast audience.
Hello, everybody, and hello, Richard, and hello, Sherilyn. Thank you again for having me on your show, and I think this is the second time, so I'm delighted to be back.
We're glad to have you back on our new video podcast.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, I can see things have spruced up a lot since I was here last time, so Happy New Year to all your listeners and viewers. I don't think we can call them listeners anymore. They are viewers also.
True.
Viewers and listeners, because we also put out an audio version. So
sure
all engines ahead standard. At the end of today's show, we'll share with you our best home-based business tips. Today's tip: what is one of the best ways to generate new business from your existing customers? Stay tuned and we'll give you the answer at the end of today's show.
So Dr. Bella, there's an old saying that to be careful about what you wish for as you might get it. Growth presents challenges. What is the single biggest mistake small businesses make when pursuing growth?
Well, actually, you started it very well. You posed the question beautifully, because growth is seductive. If you ask anybody, do you want to grow? The natural answer is yes, we want to grow. And so the temptation, and that's the word, the temptation is to pursue it recklessly, to scale very fast before you've been able to sort of consolidate your current operations, and that makes a company vulnerable. And so I would say that scaling too fast without thought of how to protect, preserve, and nurture and consolidate current operations, that is the biggest challenge and also the biggest temptation.
So we got temptation and we got seduction. So there's, everybody just kind of gets seduced into wanting to grow. And it can create. You got to approach it intelligently and plan out how it is you're going to do, and also how realistic it is as far as
nothing wrong with growth. But as you said, Captain, you've got to be realistic, you've got to be disciplined, and you've got to plan and implement. And as you said, Sherilyn, at the top of the show, just like any other business process, it is no different.
Well, Gaurav, statistics tell us that the average life of a small business is rather low, under 5 years. Gaurav, given that, isn't it strange that there's a lot of talk about growth, but not a lot of talk about survival?
I am a very aggressive reader, and I have a very large library. And I haven't counted them, but there must be at least over several hundred books. But one of my most favorite books is The Art of Survival. And you're absolutely right. We have you ever noticed at a conference, people throw out these statistics? More than 80% of companies don't last for a number of more than X years. And usually that X is somewhere between 3 and 5, And yet, all the time, when you look at the agenda of these conferences, people are talking about how to scale your business 10X, how to do something 5X, how to do something 7X. Everybody is trying to lure people into that growth trap, and no one is talking about, hey, 80% of you may not even be around. So I think that's a huge paradox. I really believe that we are shortchanging business owners and entrepreneurs. We should be talking about survival at the same level that we talk about growth, giving it the same emphasis. So my sincere advice to business owners is, first think about survival, ensure survival, then let's start talking about growth, because with all due respect, companies that don't exist can't grow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, coming from the military background, we're all about survival. When we're a plan, then it's about how do you survive, and then how do you survive as a business. That's a great topic just to circle back on a little bit with survival. What are some of the other reasons you mentioned there before? There's a lot of hype that goes on about surviving, but what are some of the factors that prevent, like, the small business owner who's new to a business not to recognize that their survival is at stake right from the start, and they recognize too late that it's all about survival now, and they needed to think about that first before they started growing? Any thoughts on that point?
I think part of it is what I would call human psychology. When we get up in the morning, we don't think about driving and having an accident. We think about driving and getting somewhere. Or we don't think about, oh my God, something bad can happen. I mean, of course, if you're a huge pessimist, maybe. But for most people, they take it for granted that good things are going to happen. And especially if you have a half a brain and you're thinking about things normally and you have good education, a lot of times people really don't think about ultra negative things. However, so the lack of survival of a company is not a negative thought. It's just a matter of fact. Mm-hmm. If you're a company, you're always vulnerable because no one is guaranteed customers and no one is guaranteed repeat business and no one is guaranteed growth. So I think people underestimate the value of all those things. What is the value of a customer? What is the value of repeat business? And what is the value of continued sort of existence in this marketplace?
So that it's almost like a point of crisis, that fight or flight with the things that will impact your business. And so to help recognize that, car crash coming, that you need to, appreciate the value, emphasize the value of the different parts of your business, such as, customers and capital and marketing. And then that can then lead to greater chances for survival. Is it appreciating that value?
I would only sort of add one word to it: potential. I mean, Andy Grove, who was the CEO of Intel, he wrote this best-selling book, Only the Paranoid Survive. So I think every business person knows, and you've been in the army and the military, and I mean, in Ken Burns' documentary on Vietnam, I think a lot of people in those days, in the 60s, I'm talking the 60s now, a lot of people from America were surprised as to how come we have such great tanks and great airplanes and, we have all this technology, and yet we are fighting as if we were fighting somebody our equal, and they're not our equal. Well, guess what? Just because you have the biggest tank and the biggest plane and the biggest, infrastructure doesn't mean that the enemy doesn't have a brain and they can't figure out how to inflict defeat on you. And so the same thing Andy Grove says, only the paranoid survive, means those who don't take their survival and growth for granted, they are the ones who usually do best.
So kind of like being a defensive driver when you're on the road, always looking out for other people doing bad things.
I like that one.
Sharon, I like your philosophy. Yes, other people and bad things we have to look out for. But I think in business, paranoia means that never take your competitors for granted. Mm-hmm. Never take the impact of a new technology for granted. Very often we say, don't worry about them. They can't hurt us. But guess what? They could hurt you.
So always stay hungry too, and be on the edge, and make sure you're aware and taking care of your customers and making sure you're budgeting properly and all those facets.
Sherilyn and Richard, there's a very interesting saying in business. It says, fat dogs don't fetch. Okay, so yes, you cannot get so complacent that you forget, they say business is two parts: hunting and farming. You have to hunt for new markets, new customers, and then you have to farm them, you have to nurture them. So yes, you have to be hungry. You have to be hungry for the hunting and you have to be hungry for the farming. Otherwise, things are not going to work out.
Well, I like that paranoia. I think I'm a paranoid person naturally, so I can adapt to that book pretty quickly. Hey, before moving on to our next topic, I'd like to highlight this show's sponsor, Downline Builders Network, DBN. The DBM company helps build your network marketing downline. 100% automated, free postcards and hot leads each month. Pre-enroll now and lock in your position. For more information, call 866-722-5363 or visit mailpostcardsfromhome.com or visit our podcast website for more information on sponsors.
Okay, so first you need a plan to start up and grow your business, and then you need a plan to actually grow your business further. So Dr. Bhalla, can you outline some steps that small businesses should ideally follow to pursue a sensible growth strategy?
So I think that let's just start with a very simple situation where, let's say there's a company, they have a product. It could be a software product, it could be a physical product, it could be a virtual, like even an enabler, like they're an event planner. So they have, it's an intangible. Now, in each case, they will have what I would call a core product and a core market, correct? So let's say if you are a carpet cleaning company, and let's say you're a carpet cleaning company, then you have a core product and you have a core offering. Now, that's where every company should start. And that's what should be protected, because that's where the survival comes from. That's why we call it the bread and butter business. The best advice that I can give a small business is that if you want to grow, look for an adjacency. So let's say that you're only cleaning carpets for residential people. Well, why can't you add office buildings or apartment complexes, etc.? So that's an adjacency. So the first step in the plan would be an adjacency, because you'll still be, sort of utilizing your current strengths in your core market with your core customers. A second step may be geography. So let's say I live in Northern Virginia, so I live in Fairfax County. But there's Arlington County, there's Alexandria County, there are other counties around, and close by there's Maryland, and it's not very far. So maybe you can add, adjacent geographies or adjacent zip codes. So again, if you notice what I'm saying is I'm saying grow slowly, grow intelligently, grow cautiously, through adjacencies. But all the time, a business should be thinking as to how can we take that next leap, that next step forward. Doesn't mean you have to implement it today, but they can be thinking about it. So when the opportunity presents itself, they're ready. So I would say that those are the first 2 or 3 steps. First, figure out your core market, your core customers, expand in adjacencies, whether they are markets or geographies. Then think about new products, because new products are very expensive. They drain cash, and success is not guaranteed. So establish yourself and then start expanding into new products, new markets, etc.
Well, in some ways, new products and new markets can, if not done right, they can almost be like starting up a new business. And that's where some of the, the startup headaches can come into. And reading between the lines and something, in your comments right there, I sense that sometimes business owners, when they go into a growth phase on some part of the business, if they're not thinking about it and being paranoid again about it, their core business can suffer, and they take their focus off their core business. And then that could crumble the whole foundation on everything if they let their core business lapse.
Absolutely. Well, very well said. Suddenly you start growing, you start scaling very fast, and then you start patting yourself on the back and say, I must be doing something right, which is why we are being so successful. And then what you do is you take your eye off the ball. And maybe you're not doing something right. Maybe it's just that people are hungry for that product. There aren't too many good competitors, and so you're just being sucked into the marketplace. And it is human nature. When we do well, we congratulate ourselves. When we don't do well, we blame everybody else. The devil made me do it. The environment, the marketplace, these damn customers, they don't understand value, etc. So we have a habit of patting ourselves or blaming others. So when people are doing very well, I think they should stop and take stock of it. Is it really something that they are doing? Or is it just the rising tide that's lifting them? And yes, you're absolutely right. Don't take your eye off the ball, that you need to continue to do well in the core market. Because as you said, entering a new product, a new market is almost like a startup mindset, and also means startup cash, which has to come from somewhere. So if you're doing well in your core market, you can take some of that and divert it to your new ventures. But if you're not doing well in your core market, you're not going to have anything to divert to your new ventures.
That's a good point. Kind of leads into our next question that, many factors limit growth, such as market demand, employee support, time available, and the big kahuna, money. Gaurav, what role do costs play in the pursuit of growth? And I think you've hit some of these points already in our discussion thus far. How do costs and expenses impact us in pursuing growth?
Again, I have to compliment you on that question, because very often we look at growth as a win. And when we are looking at a win, we're thinking about gains. But each gain comes at a cost. So let's say that some months ago, when I first came on your show, you were doing the podcast as purely an audio venture, correct?
Yes.
Now you're doing it as an audio and a video venture. Clearly, the costs of the two are not identical. There are some gains, but there are also some costs. So I just want to caution business people by saying that if you are pursuing growth, don't just look at the gains of growth. Also ask yourselves, how much is that growth going to cost us, and can we afford it? And if you can't, well, then you need to be very careful about pursuing it. So costs play a huge role, and just like survival, they don't get enough airtime, unfortunately.
So to kind of correlate that, you've got costs, but then you have to link or connect that cost to actual money that's going to come in on the additional growth that you get. Peg, how much revenue is going to come in, and it comes down to at what cost. What's the the cost benefit ratio on that? And maybe that's the way people get trapped in, just because they think they're generating some revenue. That's successful, but you got to tag it to what the costs are for getting there.
I mean, let's go back to our carpet cleaning friend. Okay, let's take that business. So they go to 5 houses. Clearly, the 5 houses are not going to form a cartel and negotiate a rate with this carpet cleaning guy. So he'll get 5 times the amount of whatever the base amount is. But now let's say the carpet cleaning guy is pursuing growth with a business, and that business has 5 buildings. Well, guess what? They're not going to pay him 5 times for each building. They're going to negotiate a rate with him, which is going to be a discounted rate. So his margins are going to come down, or her margins are going to come down, or the company's margins are going to come down. And that's the cost of growth that I'm talking about. And so when those margins start getting squeezed and compressed, well, your ability to maneuver gets severely restricted.
So going off of that, let's assume we're able to crack the code on growth and we're able to put our business on the right path. So Gaurav, is there a limit to growth, or can growth be limitless?
I think the year was 1976, 7, 8, something like that. I just finished my MBA, and I was working for Nestle as a product group manager for instant drinks, Nescafe and condensed milk and all those nice kinds of products. And I remember there was a huge wave that was made by a global think tank, because they came out with a book called The Limits to Growth. And that's the first time people started asking, that we only have one planet. I mean, today, for example, the consciousness of sustainability is all around, but that time it was very little. And so said, can we just keep on increasing our standard of living, our consumption limitlessly, or is there a limit to growth? And I, for one, sincerely believe that there are limits to growth. How much Whole Foods, how many, heads of lettuce are you going to buy from them? Or how many cans of tuna are you going to buy from them? Even if you're well-intentioned, and even if money was of no consequence. So I think there are limits to growth. However, before a single entity, a single company can hit that limit, it's still a huge distance. But we should not assume that growth is limitless. We should also always assume that growth is limited, which is why we always have to find the next arena to grow, because it's going to get harder and harder as we get bigger and bigger.
Yeah, just experience-wise, one of the problems that seems to impact home-based businesses and smaller businesses is a lot of them are one-person shows, and then they're operated part-time around a day job, typically getting started. And so, you reach a point where you're successful at that point, and there's risks. There's risks involved with moving up from what you can handle. You can't you can't stay up all night, continue to work it. So, do you hire somebody to bring your brother in or your sister in, or, hire an employee, and, those steps to growth come with a lot of risk after you've maxed out yourself as an individual. So that, that's just one of the challenges that, the smaller home-based business owner faces when he or she is getting started.
The Forbes magazine, they publish a list called the Little Giants. These are small companies that are doing very well.
Yeah,
and are growing.
No.
and are growing intelligently. No, I think you're a little too small for that list. But these are not home businesses. But what struck me about this list was that everybody has a very enlightened view of business. They approach business with an intelligent frame. So one of the things that I read was that if you want your employees to behave like owners of the business, then you must treat them like owners. You can't hide data from them. You can't hide facts from them. So yes, there is a risk, but there's also a reward for people who are willing to approach their business in an enlightened way, whether you're a home business or a non-home business.
Wow. Well, Dr. Gaurav Bella, this has been a great discussion, sharing advice on small business growth strategies. Do you have any final points to share with our audience?
Yeah, I think that let's not overvalue growth. I'll give you a simple example. There's a small company called Basecamp. I don't know if you folks use it. It is a software that people use to collaborate and communicate. And they have an avowed policy. They say, we don't care about growing massively. We would only like to grow around 5% every year so we can retain the look, feel, touch, smell of a small company. Because we value our vacations. We value the fact that we know each other, etc. So let's keep growth in its proper perspective. It is good, but again, when chased recklessly, it can also cause a lot of pain.
Well, Dr. Gaurav Bella, thank you for being such a great guest on our Home Business Podcast.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I hope your viewers and listeners benefited.
Well, to learn more about Dr. Gaurav Bella, visit knowledgekinetics.com or visit our podcast website at homebusinessmag.com for more information.
Okay, the answer
if I may just correct that, they should go to gauravbhalla.com, myname.com.
Gauravbhalla. Okay, we'll correct that on the post page on the website. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the answer to today's home business tip. What is one of the best ways to generate new business from existing customers? Offer them a premium for placing an order for your goods or services. Customers love premiums. Don't make the mistake of discounting your products and services to gain repeat business. Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Home Business Podcast. Share your feedback with us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and at our website, homebizmag.com.
Visit the website for information on advertising. Subscribe free to our newsletter. Please visit our sponsors. For more information, visit homebusinessmag.com or our Home Business Expo at homebusinessexpo.com.
I'm Richard Captain Henderson saying anchors away.
And I'm Sherilyn Colleen. We'll talk with you soon. Until then,
make it a great home-based biz day.